The battle was over in a single morning. 50,000 Romans, dead before noon. The ground at Cannae was so thick with corpses, legionaries couldn't fall without landing on another man. Hannibal had annihilated them. But here is what history rarely tells you. 10,000 Romans survived, captured, alive, sitting in Hannibal's camp, waiting. And Rome had a choice. Pay the ransom, bring them home. Rome said no. Not from poverty, not from weakness, from cold, deliberate choice. The Senate looked at 10,000 of its own sons, men who had bled for Rome, and chose to leave them there. This is the verdict they handed down, and it is one of the most chilling decisions in military history. 216 BC, 3 days after the bloodbath. The dust hadn't settled. Messengers were still arriving in Rome, delivering numbers the city couldn't process. 47,000 dead. Some say 50,000, some say more. 2 consuls had led the army into that field. One died in the battle, the other fled. The Senate chamber fell silent in a way it had never been silent before. Then, Hannibal sent an offer. He hadn't destroyed the prisoners. That was unusual. Hannibal was many things. Needlessly cruel to soldiers, he was not. He sent 10 of the Roman captives to Rome as delegates. 10 men. Walking back through the city gates, into the forum, they carried a proposal. A ransom, 3 minas of silver per soldier, 2 per Roman citizen, 1.5 per ally. The math was not complicated. 10,000 men, a modest price per head. Total cost, manageable. Bring them home. That was the offer. But before those 10 men entered the Senate, they swore an oath. A Roman oath. To Hannibal. If negotiations failed, if Rome refused the ransom, they would return to captivity, willingly. Back to Hannibal's camp, back to their chains. They swore it on their honor. In Rome, an oath to an enemy was still an oath, or so most of them believed. The chamber filled. Senators who had lost sons at Cannae, men who had sent nephews, brothers, friends into that field. And now they faced a question that was not really about money. It was about what Rome was. The ransom advocates were not cowards. They made a simple human argument. These men fought. They were overwhelmed. No courage breaks a trap that has already closed. No valor escapes a perfect encirclement. They deserve to come home. It was logical. It was compassionate. It almost worked. Then Fabius Maximus rose to speak. Fabius Maximus, the dictator. The man who had counseled patience when every Roman wanted blood. He was not loved. He was not warm. But he was right more often than men who were. And now he stood in that chamber and said something that silenced the room. Rome does not ransom its soldiers, not because it cannot afford to, because it must not. His argument was not cruelty. It was architecture. The Roman legionary was the most feared soldier in the known world, not only for his training, not only for his equipment, but for what he believed about surrender. He believed it was worse than death. That belief, absolute, non-negotiable, was Rome's greatest weapon. The moment Rome paid to retrieve surrendered soldiers, the weapon broke. Every legionary on every future battlefield would know, if I surrender, Rome will pay for me. There is a price. There is a way out. And the man who hesitates in battle, who calculates his odds, who chooses survival over the line, he is no longer Roman. Fabius wasn't condemning 10,000 men. He was protecting the next 100,000. The Senate voted. The ransom was refused. 10,000 Romans, alive, breathing, waiting in Hannibal's camp, were left there, by their own city, by their own Senate, by their own republic. The delegation was informed. 9 of the 10 men looked at each other and turned back toward the gates, back toward Hannibal, back toward captivity, because they had sworn an oath. But the 10th man, he had a plan. His name is lost to some histories. His trick is not. Before the delegation had left Hannibal's camp, this man had devised a loophole. He had walked out of camp, made it to the gates. Then, before formally rejoining the delegation, turned back, returned to the camp, said he had forgotten something, then left again. In his mind, he had returned to captivity. Technically, briefly, the oath was fulfilled. He walked back into Rome, past the Forum, back to his home, back to his wife and his children and his life. The oath? Satisfied. On a technicality. Rome was watching. The story spread quickly. The Senate heard it. And here is what Rome did to the man who had cheated an oath to an enemy. They sent him back, in chains, back to Hannibal. Because in Rome, the letter of the oath was not the point. The honor behind it was. A Roman who would trick an enemy was a Roman who would trick anyone. Rome did not want him. And so the man who had been so desperate to stay was sent back anyway. The 10,000 waited. Hannibal, receiving no ransom, sold them. Not all at once, not all to the same places. Some went to Greece, sold in the markets of Achaia and Boeotia, bought by merchants who had no idea and no interest in who these men had once been. Roman legionaries, veterans, men who had marched under eagles, now grinding grain, hauling stone, sleeping in slave quarters. Some died in captivity. Some survived for decades, long enough to hear, years later, that Rome had won the war, that Hannibal had been driven from Italy, that Carthage had fallen. Some were eventually freed, bought by private citizens, never by Rome's official hand. Rome had made its verdict, and it lived with it. So what do we make of this? Was Fabius right? By Rome's own logic, yes. The Roman military machine ran on a singular belief. Surrender was not an option. That belief produced soldiers who fought past the point any rational man would stop. And those soldiers built an empire. Fabius protected that system, ruthlessly, correctly. By any other logic, it is one of the coldest decisions in military history. 10,000 men, alive, salvageable, left to slavery because their survival was inconvenient to the story Rome needed to tell about itself. Cannae didn't break Rome, but what followed it left a fracture, because for every Roman legionary who heard this story, and they all heard it, there was a moment of reckoning. Rome would not come for you, not if coming for you cost too much. That is the whispered verdict of Cannae. Not Hannibal's tactics, not the encirclement, not the blood. The Senate chamber, the vote, the silence, and 10,000 men walking back toward their chains.